Hi, my name is Allie Reynolds, and I did my research paper over how, in today's society, the average white person and the other races don't accept Native American culture. And they use stereotypes and put negative connotations on the way we see Indians, specifically through music and media. Music has a large role in our society today, and having white people and other races pretend to be Indian and try to play their music is harming their culture overall. And this is because most people don't have knowledge about their culture and the music and the basic stereotypes that they're using to form their opinions about how what Native American culture is. So one of the first original forms of entertainment in America were minstrel shows, and pretty much minstrel shows they were like live variety acts, comedy shows. They could be dances, they could be musical numbers. They were popular because the audience wanted to be able to relate to the characters in the shows. And so the point of these minstrel performances were to try to adapt to what the audiences wanted. So around the time where these became popular, the white population were really interested in how the African American race and the slavery that they had to go through. And so what the actors would do in these shows is the white actors would put black paint on their faces and act African American. And so this was called minstrelsy, blackface minstrelsy, and it's just an essential mockery of African American culture through these entertainment and media and music and dance, and how they made fun of them by doing some of their accents, like stylized accents and musical gestures, and this mannerisms that go along with the African American culture. And these were very stereotypical, but it played a huge part in media. And so singing blackface was also used against Native American, but it was called singing redface instead, which goes along to my main point of my paper, is that one of the main aspects of pretending to be Indian in society is singing redface. And singing redface occurs when a non-Native American person pretends to be Native American through song. So they're singing Native American songs, trying to relate to them, but they're not, because they don't have the knowledge to back it up. Because of the lack of knowledge, they've promoted like racial slurs, and they mock the language. And singers like dress up in headdresses and feathers, and they're pretty much playing Indian. And most of these stereotypes are formed through other sources of media, so not just through song, but through like music and movies and education too. So I remember growing up that in elementary school, we would go to school especially for Thanksgiving, and we'd dress up as Indian and be able to be we would be able to wear headdresses and wear paint, and we were allowed to learn chants and learn different songs in the Indian culture. And now looking back at it, we were just very stereotypical, and we didn't think about the culture, and we weren't knowledgeable about the culture at that age. We just thought it was for fun. We would learn songs such as "I'm a Little Indian," sung as "I'm a Little Teapot," and these chants were just pretend to be Native American all day, just for fun and not for an educational purpose, which is where we fall in trying to understand Indian culture. So I was brought up in a society where playing Indian was normal, and looking back on it, we had no respect for their culture at all. We just thought it was like something fun to dress up as. And the media obviously had a huge role in this. And thinking about movies, there are multiple movies, but one sticks out in my head is Peter Pan. And in Peter Pan, there's a really great example of playing Indian and how the Lost Boys are part of the Pickaninny tribe, which is just a tribe who sounds Indian. It's not necessarily correct or formal, but they're responsible for taking Tiger Lily. And there are multiple scenes where Peter Pan and the other kids, the main characters, are playing Indian in order to become part of their tribe so they can save Tiger Lily. And this part of the movie shows there are very negative stereotypes associated with Native Americans dressing in headdresses, becoming red-faced, and sitting Indian style and mocking Indian language. Which just brings me to another point of growing up. We would always be told to sit Indian style. It wasn't crisscross applesauce, it wasn't cross your legs, it was Indian style, and that's definitely something that sticks out in my mind when we're thinking about the culture, because that's not necessarily what Indians have done, and it's just something that's been put to a term that doesn't necessarily need to be associated with Native Americans. And introducing this misrepresentation of Native Americans at such a young age can lead to cultural confusion. So cultural confusion is a term used when describing Americans who know nothing more than what's in the books, what's in the movies, what's in the songs, and what stories have just told them. And so they're very culturally confused because they don't know what's right and what's wrong. People think that honoring Native Americans by dressing up as them, but they all don't have the knowledge that is needed to actually appreciate their culture. This actually has happened to me, not personally, but in my life. There's a girl who belongs to a part of an organization that I belong to and have a very big part in, and she decided to dress up as an Indian for Halloween and posted on social media, and it pretty much went viral, saying that she was disrespecting the culture and all this stuff. And she came back and said that she's actually part Native American, and she was trying to go back to her heritage and all this stuff. And what really she didn't realize, though, was that she was following stereotypes, not necessarily the actual culture that she's from. And so that just shows that cultural confusion is embedded in us from a very young age and will continue to hurt the Indian culture if it's not stopped, because she said and admitted that she was part Indian, but then went and dressed up as one and got backlash from it. So even if you are part Indian, you could be raised in a way that you don't actually know the right culture and the way to act when trying to honor their culture. One of the musical examples that stuck out to me in the book was actually a song by Tim McGraw, and I listened to Tim McGraw growing up, and so when I heard the song, and I had never heard it before, called Indian Outlaw, I was really shocked. In the song, the main chorus goes how he's like half Cherokee, half Choctaw, and he was like the outcast in society because he was Indian, and the lyrics are filled with stereotypes about the Indian culture, saying words like wigwam, and he plays on his tom-tom, and he gets in trouble with the medicine man, and you can tell that the song is supposed to be very lighthearted. It's not supposed to be like a bash at their culture, but it definitely uses beats and like melodies that you would hear, I would think, in like country, like Wild West songs. And in the Wild West, the Indians were portrayed as the bad people, the people that you wanted to fight, and so that's also a negative connotation going with the song. The music video I watched, Tim McGraw doesn't necessarily dress up as Indian, but he definitely plays the Indian outlaw, and he rides an Indian motorcycle, and his girlfriend is Indian, and he's like playing his music in like a country dance bar. And the other side of it, so he plays Indian and then he also plays himself, and he is definitely singing red-faced throughout the entire video, using knowledge that you can tell is only based off of media and stereotypes that have gone along with the media. And after the song dropped, you could tell there was immediate backlash, and all of the Native American culture and people wanted it to be taken off the radio stations because it just did not have a good outlook on the way they were actually brought up, and so a Native American man called Vernon Belcourt actually wrote the radio station a letter and asked them to please take it off, and has shared his feelings with the way the song made him feel, and they actually took it off. And Tim McGraw didn't feel like it should have been taken off. He thought it was a very novelty song, and that it was just for fun, but he didn't realize that it was actually hurting their culture by giving someone the wrong misinterpretation of what Native Americans are. And what I got from an article that I read is that Tim McGraw didn't really feel sympathetic towards the people. He didn't realize that it was harmful and just thought that they were kind of complaining about it, really didn't have any sympathy towards them. Which brings me into my next topic, idealized sympathy. So idealized sympathy is pretty much when artists are singing songs and using racial slurs or negative stereotypes about the Native American culture, and they realize that it's hurting their culture and they start to feel sympathetic about it. But they act sympathetic and they're trying to take back what they meant, but they are misunderstanding how, because they don't really know what they're apologizing for or why they're apologizing, and they don't really care about the Native American culture because they're the ones who are bringing in more audiences and more money with that, which is drawing more attention to the negative stereotypes of the Native Americans. So it just kind of blows my mind that they even think that that's an okay thing. So idealized sympathy definitely hurts the Indian culture even more by undermining the issues of misrepresentation of their culture. Another aspect of interpretation of Native American culture in our society is racial antipathy. I didn't know what racial antipathy was, so I looked up the dictionary definition, and the definition is just pretty much a strong dislike or hatred toward a race other than your own. And so in the textbook, it lists off a bunch of negative stereotypes that were given to Native Americans, and one of those was being a savage Indian, which just meant that they were unsophisticated and barbarous, and they just wanted to fight, is pretty much what savage meant. And from this viewpoint, the white Americans, the Indians, they just grouped together them as one who wanted to fight against the whites or average Americans, and it just hurts the overall aspect of seeing them in different tribes because they're grouped together as one. And another term that is still used in this society today is actually called Indian giver. And I hadn't heard this before, but I was working on this paper in one of my classes, and my friend next to me said that her grandparents call each other Indian givers all the time, which just blew my mind that people still use this derogatory term today. And so Indian giver pretty much means that an Indian gives anything, he expects something in return. So he's pretty much just being selfish. And people use it to this day without even realizing that it's a derogatory term, and they don't know where it came from or how it should be used, if it should be even used at all. The term Indian giver originated from Lewis and Clark, and pretty much they just had a misunderstood series of financial transactions between them and Native Americans, and it blew up into this whole term that is now used in songs today as a breakup song, calling each other selfish, saying that they just want something in return if they get something. So many of the songs that use Indian giver don't even talk about the Native American culture. They just use the term in the way that it means you're being a selfish person. And so cultural misinterpretation or misappropriation, is pretty much a term that kind of describes everything that I've talked about. And this paper so far in this presentation, and just how non-native cultures are using native aspects to make music, books, movies, and etc. and all the without probably realizing that it's hurting the Native American culture even more. So cultural misappropriation is defined as the intentional theft or tangible or intangible cultural commodities for the intent to create a stereotype or economic gain, which brings me back to the music video of Tim McGraw, because he didn't really have any other reason to make this song or to have the music video except for economic gain and his own interest, and he didn't of what the articles I read, he didn't really have a good forethought on how it would hurt the culture overall and how others in the Native American, who are actually Native Americans, would feel about it. So I hope in the future that the Native American culture will be respected and restored so the stereotypes won't define them, because we have definitely made huge leaps in accepting other races such as African Americans and Asians, and we have fallen short on accepting the fact that Native Americans are people and we should be treated as equal. And I learned a lot from this class, and I definitely think that I will pay more attention to these sorts of things, because I haven't before. I didn't really pay attention to it because you're just raised in a society like that where you're called like Indian, like you're sitting Indian style, or the things like movies and Peter Pan, that's a kid's movie. And so it really is brought to my attention. It's definitely something that if I can help, I would love to in the future.